Hey there, I'm Molly, and you're listening to the It's All Connected podcast, where we talk about life, business, finances, travel, health, spirituality, and how it's all connected. This podcast is for you if you want real and relatable content that makes you feel like you're having coffee or drinks with a friend. You ready? Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. I'm Molly, and welcome to my new podcast, It's All Connected. This podcast is for you if you want real and relatable conversations and stories that make you feel like you're having coffee or drinks with a friend. I'm going to be talking about life, business, finances, travel, health, spirituality, and how it's all connected on this podcast because I truly do believe that one area of your life has an effect or impact on all the other areas, and they all make up of who you are as a person. So some of you might be listening to this podcast episode because you were subscribed to one of my previous podcasts, Keep Getting Better or Digital Product with Molly. Or some of you are probably tuning in because I talked about it on Instagram and you're curious. Either way, welcome to the podcast. It is so good to have you. So in this podcast episode, I am going to be talking about why I decided to create this podcast, who it's for, why I decided to name it It's All Connected, what you can expect, and also why I decided to keep my current podcast instead of like creating a whole new one. So yeah, let's get started. Okay. So the reason why I decided to create this podcast is because I really wanted to start using my voice again. And it's been quite honestly a challenge. It's been a challenge for the past 2 or 3 years. I felt like I was losing my voice and I saw it all happening. And the more I lost it, like the more lost it became, if that makes sense. Like I saw it crashing and I didn't know what to do. And there were times when I tried to fix it. There were times when I was just like, I'm just going to surrender and, you know, let what happens happens. And I think that I am in a place now where I'm ready. I'm ready to show up again. I'm ready to share what I've learned. I'm ready to like document my journey. And also, I still think that I'm really good at helping other people. Like, despite the challenges that I've gone through in the past few years, I also equally believe that I am great at helping other people solve their problems, especially when it comes to business and marketing. And something that I realized is that both can coexist, like you can struggle in some areas of life and then you can be really good at some other areas in your life. And then sometimes it's like vice versa, where maybe you're struggling in other areas of your life that you weren't before, but you're thriving in the other areas. Okay, hopefully you follow that. But yeah, and yeah, just like overcoming fears and doubts that I've had in the past few years, like, what if it's not good enough? What if I'm not good enough? What if other people don't like it? What if it's not perfect? I know that a lot of business owners and content creators and just people in general struggle with these things. And so I wanted to share because I want to remind myself and also other people that we are not alone and that, it's okay to not have it all together. And this podcast is also focused on like healing and growth and like working on yourself, right? Because there's always room for improvement, but also learning to be proud of yourself and being kind to yourself and embracing where you are in your journey. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like embracing where I'm at in my journey, and I want to like build a community of like-minded people. I want to find my community again. And yeah, so if you resonate with this podcast, I'm so happy that you're here. And if you don't resonate with this podcast, that's fine too. There are many podcasts out there. There's many people out there, but yeah, as for who it's for, to be completely honest with you, I've thought a lot about this and I'm not entirely sure yet. And something that I've always said in the past is that the best way for us to figure out is through action by doing things. And so here I am following through on my own advice. I think that as I progress with this podcast, as I do more episodes, as I start showing up again, I think that I'm going to get more clarity on who this podcast is really for, what I'm doing and all of that stuff. So to be completely transparent, I am still figuring a lot of that out. And I think for the past year or so, I let that like stop me a lot of like, oh, I don't know these things, so I shouldn't do them yet. And I was like, no, I want to start this podcast. I definitely have things that I want to talk about. I have a general idea of like where I want this podcast to go and what I want to do with it. But in terms of like who my ideal listener is yet, I'm not entirely sure. So, the reason why I decided to name this podcast, It's All Connected, is because in the past few years, I really come to realize that everything is all connected, right? We are multi layered people. We're not like just one thing. And I think I struggled with that a lot as a business owner because you always hear like niche down, and you basically almost put yourself into this box. And I have just never done well, like trying to fit myself into a box. And I know that that can work really well for some people, but I think it almost like paralyzed me into not taking action because I felt like I needed to do something that I was known for, right? That's why my old podcast is called Digital Products with Molly, because I was like, oh, if I just like have the word term digital products everywhere, then people associate me with that. But what I've realized recently is that I'm like, no, I want to do different things to my life. I want to write books. I want to host retreats. I want to maybe like have my own co-working, co-living space one day. Like I want to do different things with my life because I just want to explore. I want to expand. I want to try different things. And also like I've come to the realization that like our past, our present, and our future are all connected, right? As well as like our mind, body, and soul. Like all of this matters and everything is all connected. Like my traveling ties into who I am, and my spirituality ties into who I am, and my business also ties into like who I am, and it's all really connected. And maybe that in your own life too, like you see how all of these things are all connected, like your family life and your friend life and your career, finances, etc. Like they're all connected, and each one has an impact or effect on the other, and they overlap, right? So if you resonate with that, then I think you're definitely in the right place. Or if you're just curious about my thoughts on things, then you're also welcome here too. But I really wanted to name this podcast something that felt aligned with me and something that gave me room to explore and expand on, and something that like connects with what I want to do in the future. And I thought that this podcast name was really fitting of like, oh, what I'm doing now is going to connect with what I'm doing, what I want to do in the future with writing books and maybe like making journals and notebooks and all of that stuff. And I think that even though the journey has not been linear, I can see it all connecting. So I've been doing I'm currently recording from Malaysia. And so I've been doing like a lot of energy work, like breath work and meditations. And it's funny because, by the way, if you don't know, I'm a Gemini. So I'm like, I feel like my thoughts just bounce around a lot. I go off on a lot of tangents. So just warning you now, but as I'm doing these guided meditations, I'm like visiting past versions of myself. And I'm like, oh yeah, I used to be this really creative person, or I used to be like this really organized and, this person who plans a lot. And so I'm seeing how it all kind of connects together, and how this podcast came to be, or how I'm here right now. And so yeah, basically I think I really like this podcast name. And it's funny because names are something I really struggle with. And I almost named this podcast Don't Overthink It, because I was like overthinking it so much. And I just wrote down Don't Overthink It. But then I came up with this name instead, and it like just clicked instantly for me. So yeah, we're going with that. As for what you can expect from this podcast, I will be doing weekly episodes on life, business, and everything in between. I eventually want to bring on guests, but I think for the beginning, I really want to do solo episodes and just like, again, practice using my own voice again, because I think that's really important. And to be honest with you, it's kind of scary. Like every time I finish recording a podcast, so this is not the first podcast episode I'm recording. I think I actually went backwards. This is the third one I'm recording in like this week. But every time I finish recording an episode, I'm like, oh, was that good? Should I just like redo the whole thing? But I'm really pushing myself to just go forward with it, to trust that the people who want to be here are going to be here. The people who need to listen to this podcast are going to find this podcast, and just like let go of trying to control everything, you know? So this podcast is for you if you want like real, honest, and relatable content. I think, you know what? I think I do know who this podcast is for. It's for people who like don't want to fit into a box. They want to like create their own life on their own terms, or they want to, hear someone else who is creating their own life. And maybe they got lost along the way, right? Like I feel like I got lost along the way. One of my podcast episodes is actually going to be how I'm turning 30 soon. And I thought that my life, I don't know. Part of me is like, I thought my life would be different, but also I thought my life would be like exactly the way it is right now. So I feel like both of those thoughts can coexist. And so if you resonate with that, then again, I think this podcast episode is for you. But I really hope that you find this podcast helpful or inspiring or entertaining or just real, or like all of the above. I hope it's something that you look forward to listening to. And the reason why I decided to keep the podcast as is instead of creating like a whole new one, because my old episodes are going to show up below too, is because I don't want to erase my history. Like I don't want to, like I want to see my own improvement, I guess. And I want to see, there's not that if I were to start a new podcast, I'd be ashamed of anything, but like, okay, I don't think that thought is following, but I just feel like, again, it's all connected, and the things that I have done in the past, or the things I've done in the past, connects to where I am currently, and it has made an impact on where I am currently, and I just wanted to keep that. And so, yeah, there you have it, an intro into how it's all connected, how I go off on like different tangents. I always say that like my thoughts have thoughts, but I feel like the guided meditations are definitely helping me just calm myself down and be more in the present. So I'm also going to release a few other episodes at the time of releasing this one. So you can check out the different episodes. I'm going to have one on like life, healing, business, and marketing. And then next week I am going to be releasing a episode on traveling, and it's all going to be all about how I got into solo traveling and why I decided to travel solo. So if you want to hear all about it, make sure to subscribe to this podcast so you can get notified of when new episodes go up. And yeah, if you like this podcast, make sure that you are subscribed so you get notified of that. And with that, I will talk to you in the next episode. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I hope you have an amazing day, night, whatever time of day it is for you. Okay, bye.